Hello, 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 beautiful people. Back at it again for some portfolio reviews. Hello, Lily. Good to see you. Good to see you. We were just having a nice little chat in our community about volunteer work in the games industry. Oh boy. Yeah, that topic is always really interesting, especially from the perspective, you know, it's really easy to make black and white statements on like established companies, right? For example, established companies with a lot of funding going in, they should not hire volunteer work. It's just straight as that, like black and white. It gets really interesting when it goes to like let's say you were to start like a new studio. You don't really have that much funding yet because you're still building your prototype, but you do need people to build your prototype, right? What do you do? What do you do in that case? I think that's where it gets really tricky, right? Because it's not easy to make a game studio from scratch. That's why so many of them fail, right? Like even just like a general business, so many of them fail. So that, yeah, especially in games then, adding this difficult time on top of it, it's not easy to get something from the ground. But I think, and I've never done this myself, right? So I'm really speaking not from experience here, so don't take my word for it. But I feel that from what I see is that some sort of revenue or income-based share or something like that is really the only way that you can make that work. Or what you do is, yeah, I would wonder how this works, because there are mechanisms where you can apply for funding, right? So let's say you get like some state funding and all that kind of stuff, and you're in the application process, and you then promise to give a certain percentage to people that work for you, potentially. But I don't really see how that's going to cover the cost of like, well, in most cases, how that's going to cover the cost of like a small even, yeah, especially not a medium-sized development company. So, yeah. How would I set up a company? What would I do? Like, the way that I would do it is you would almost have to do it on the side. You would almost have to have like a full-time job, then work on your passion project on the side, building towards that like vertical slice, setting up a website, all that kind of stuff, so that as soon as you have something to show off and you have like a nice package, right, or like a pitch that you can sell, that's when you go and apply for funding while still working your full-time job, right? And once you've got like an initial round of funding, maybe that allows you to then be like, okay, now I can take this to the next level, right? But I think in the beginning, you need to carry the burden by yourself, right? It's the same thing, the same principles with Beyond Extend, really, right? If we're talking about like starting a studio, it's not a studio, it's more like an academic thing, or like a learning community, right? But that was always my principle as well. It's like, sure, some people have offered their services for free in the past. We've always pushed back against that to a certain degree, right? Because I think what is also important is that you kind of have like an ethical stance somewhere, right? Because you can find people that are willing to do the work for free if you really start looking, right? But that's not going to last for long, especially if you then, in my opinion, start building like a successful business. So at a certain point, you kind of have to transition. Okay, what is our payment structure going to be? Like, what we have like a bunch of documentation for this now that we didn't have in the beginning. Like, depending on what certain people deliver for the workshops, they get a certain amount of pay, depending on the seniority and the country that they're in and all that kind of stuff. So you'll have to figure that stuff out. But yeah, I think in the beginning, you just have to carry the burden yourself. If you then start making a decent amount of income, my choice, what I did with Beyond Extend, was that I kept on working full-time, bringing in money, extending the runway of Beyond Extend, while hiring other people to start taking over certain things, right? So that's why we have Sunny helping us for the long-term vision, which is Beyond Academy. And then we had Evelyn and Cairo and now Josh running the workshops, because that was a way of me being like, okay, that particular thing gets a bit too heavy for me to carry on top of like all the things that I want to be doing for Beyond Extend. So that's where, okay, we're gonna take a bit of that funding. Basically, the choice is you take a bit of your funding or you cut down on the amount of stuff you're doing, right? I decided to take a bit of the funding that we had and then invest that into a person that joins the team and then helps us build more resources, right? But yeah, I think that's always like an interesting conversation, because I think the conversation of how to start your own studio is going to be more and more relevant for a lot of people, and is already more and more relevant now, but it's going to become more and more relevant in the future, I think. But yeah, so that was an interesting conversation. I think we're going to see more of those conversations happening in our community for sure. So maybe it's going to be interesting if we can find someone who's an expert in this and get them to do like a workshop for us or something like that. It would be interesting. Out into the blue, it says, my turn has finally arrived. Scary times? Nah, you're fine. You're gonna be just fine. Who are we reviewing today? Let's have a quick look. Let's see. Kyle Smith and Martina. Awesome. Did I... Because I got reached out by a person who told me to skip them for now, but I can't remember their name, so A little bit overwhelmed by my DMs at a certain point, you know? But yeah. Any interesting books in your stack there? That stack or the stack behind me? I think The ones that I personally love. Hmm. Yeah, which one do I personally love the most? I think that's a good. I love the world of Cyberpunk. I think that one is really nice. Um, but I'm a big fan of Cyberpunk. You know, even though most of the stuff that I do is medieval stuff, I love this. This book is really good. Um, I always loved the art of Fallout 4. Fallout 4 is like a game that's close to my heart. I've always loved it. But in terms of the book, that book actually has a lot more in development stuff going on than what you would normally see in like any other book. Because most of these art books, right? Most of these art books, honestly, what they are is just like a combination of like all the marketing art, right? And maybe they'll show like a little bit of in development stuff, but a lot of that is just, it's not showing you the actual in development stuff, because some of the in development stuff is honestly like very crude, very quick, very sketchy. That is the stuff that I'm always looking for, and a lot of those books, unfortunately, just don't have that in them. Because a lot of that doesn't get shown. I'll show you one other one. This is one that I bought for like, I don't know, £2 or something like that, you know? And this is from like the first Guild Wars 1. Well, the first Guild Wars 1. And I love this stuff. You know, like we have like pencil sketches and like very crude drawings and all that kind of stuff, photo bashes. So I love this stuff. Very, very evocative, right? Not focused on like pure production stuff, but it's very evocative kind of art, which is really, really cool. I've always loved this book. I'm a big fan of Guild Wars 1. It's honestly one of my all-time favorite games. I love it so much. Yeah, and I literally bought this from eBay from someone who didn't want it anymore for like £2 or something like that. Yeah, that one is good. The Arcane book. Yeah, the Arcane book I'm still making my way through. The Forging Worlds, like the stories of the art of Blizzard Entertainment, that's also like really nice. I do really enjoy that one too. And then I have some like thicker books that I'm sort of slowly making my way through. Like this one, for example. Collaborative world building for writers and gamers. And it talks about like how to build worlds, right? It sounds so stupid, but yeah, just the structure of a world, like how to set one up, like how to build a history of something, like, and distilling the history of like bigger IPs and how they establish like their world building. This is also a pretty interesting book. Yeah, still making my way through that one. I just pick it up occasionally whenever I feel like I'm reading, like reading, honestly, because yeah. And then I think at the back I have like a bunch more of just random inspirational books. I've got some game books as well, like the Witcher series, The Expanse. But most of them are just like random like photography books, or yeah, just books that I bought where I was like, ooh, that's interesting. Yeah, and then I think the bottom shelf is honestly just more like the stuff that you see in the corner down here. Where's my finger? There. All that stuff is World War I and World War II stuff. Those are books that I have that I got from my granddad. Yeah, there are like really old school books like this one. I have not properly looked through this one. When is this book actually? From 1916. So this book is like 110 years old. That is weird that I'm just holding this and it's like 110 years old. But it's about it's a Dutch book, and it's about yeah, the art of sculpting. And it literally goes through like a bunch of places and talks about like sculpting, like traditional like marble sculpting and where it comes from. And you know, like the history of it. So yeah, pretty interesting. Thick book. I need to make my way through this at a certain point, but what I love these books for is just you get a glimpse of a world that has changed so much. Like, it's always really weird. For example, this is the Acropolis, right? So the Acropolis in Greece, in Athens. Let me show you this. And it's always so weird looking at something like this that is so old. Because, first of all, barely any people. Barely any people. Second of all, no cars. So you really get a glimpse of what the world was before, like, cars dominated, like, the natural landscape. Anyway, enough about books. Welcome everybody. I would say, quickly to introduce myself, I'm Timothy Dries, senior environment artist. I've been working in games for like 10 years, blah, blah, blah. That's not important. What is important about this session is that we're going to be diving into portfolio reviews in just a minute. But this is also a session to kind of have you ask questions. If you want to get into the games industry yourself, if you want to become an environment artist, anything like that, feel free to ask questions in the chat and then we can talk about it. Lily is saying, I love the Arcane book. It took me months to get my hands on since it was sold out everywhere before. Oh, yeah. They reprinted it, I think, right? One of my favorite bookstores is Forbidden Planet in the UK. I always go there and I always look at the bargain bin section because I've bought like art books for my friends of their favorite game for like, I don't know, €3, you know? So yeah, if you're ever in the UK, in any popular destination, you're going to find like a Forbidden Planet, I think. Conceptual Vision is saying you can easily get stuck in world building rather than writing your story if you go that deep into it. Yeah, that is true. I've never really written stuff, right? To me, it was more like, okay, how can I, the imaginary story that I have in my head, how can I turn that into something that is more engaging to people with 3D, right? But I've never really written a story or I've never really started writing like a history or like, I don't know, like a Bible for a world or something like that. It's more about, I have this idea for an image, how do I construct it in like a more, in a more complete way, right? Because what we do oftentimes is we create an image, but that image is just, it is detached from the outside world, right? But with very subtle stuff, we can actually just bring it back to bring the whole world into play, right? Like little bits of signage, little bits of, you can do it with anything. But yeah, that stuff is really cool to me. I'm a book lover. This stuff is so cool. I love that old book. Yeah, I've got like a bunch of like old books. I've also got, let me see. There's like World War II like propaganda gazettes that I have that are from like my granddad, because Belgium used to be occupied by the Germans, right? And a lot of those things, he kept onto, and I kind of got from it. I got them from him as he passed. But it was really interesting to see like how much propaganda and how much brainwashing was going on like in those little papers that they were handing out. And then I think I already talked about one of the books, but these are probably like my favorite books. These guys really old as well. I think from the 1890 or something like that. But the thing that I love about it is you have like these sketches. And these sketches are so evocative. I love it so much. And you can literally just take a random page and there's gonna be like a beautiful, beautiful etching on there. Like every page of this book is honestly worthy of just making an environment about. It's awesome. I love it. I love it so much. And I've got like a couple of these. These are probably my favorite ones that I've discovered. Hello, Rustam. Conceptual Vision is saying so cool. Yeah, and there's so many awesome images. Once I have more time, I actually want to go through them and kind of scan all the pages in, and then maybe share like an inspirational book for people to just like, yeah, just like inspirational imagery, you know? That would be really cool. I wonder if you can find that book online now. I don't think so. But who knows? But yeah, what else is happening? So this morning I was working on the website, making some really good headway into the website. It's tedious stuff now. So like the fun stuff is mostly over. I just need to do the tedious stuff, making it work. Making it work on mobile and all that kind of stuff. But making some good headwinds there. So I hope that we can be released soon, because that will be good. And then over the weekend, I'm gonna sit down with Sunny. We're gonna do some co-working sessions. We're gonna go through all the content of the academy, and we're gonna clean it all up. That's gonna be really cool to do as well. So that's the plan for the weekend. And then yeah, next week will be my last week on contract work for a while at least. I don't have anything like new planned there because I want to focus on Beyond Extend for like. Well, here's the thing. Here's hoping that if everything goes well, like I will go to Beyond Extend full time and I don't have to take on contract work anymore, right? That is the goal. And I appreciate everyone for their support in that journey already. Because the goal is that if I can do this full time, I can then dedicate like 8 hours a day just creating like resources and content and all that kind of stuff. Oh my God. I'm so excited for that. Oh, so excited. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Still partially anxious, partially excited, you know, a healthy mix of the two. So I wanna make sure that everything is like working really nicely and polished as possible, and we'll see where it goes. Hello, Rostam. Hello, Pewdie. Good to see you both here. Hope you're doing well. Hello, Alex Gio. Good to see you. It's been a while. And hello, Sheila. Sorry, I missed you there. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you're all bearing the heat. Hello, Josh. Good to see you here, buddy. But yeah, so a lot of cool stuff happening. Yeah, I'm excited. Justin is asking, have you already reached out to artists to test out your course? No, so we're gonna go straight into early access, and that will be the testing phase, honestly. So we have a couple of artists that have reached out to me that I'm gonna do this weird hybrid for a moment where I'm gonna do a mentorship with them, but they also get access to all the courses that we offer too. So there's a couple of people there that I'm onboarding. If you're interested in that too, you can always reach out to me. But otherwise, we need to do a bunch more polish work on a lot of the lessons first, and make sure that we have a plan on how we go about it going forward. I mean, we do have a plan and we do have like a lot of stuff planned out, but we need to make it like more organized and make it like feasible on the website, because that transparency is what is gonna really help people sign up, right? But we've not done any testing so far, so that will probably be happening in the next month, which will probably reach out to like a bunch of people for that too. Yeah, to do like some testing as well. Hello, Harry. Good to see you. And yeah, thank you for the question, Justin. That's really appreciated. Because yeah, we are starting out with, if I remember correctly, 27 lessons that we are currently preparing, right? And then we need to also plan ahead, or like give people more visibility of what's going to happen afterwards, right? Because we definitely have a plan to not only have 27 lessons. We want to do way more and are really ambitious in what we want to do. But we need to make sure that it is packaged really nicely for people to understand what the hell we're doing, right? I really want this to be a thing where you sign up, you can follow along with the structure, and then you can basically take it from beginning to end, where it focuses on teaching you all the skills that you need as an environment artist and how to build your portfolio and how to prepare yourself for CVs, applications, and all that kind of stuff. So that is the ambition, to go the whole course would be aimed to solve the issue of just how chaotic it might be to have like so many courses and so much content out there. And we would just want to make like something nice where you can just sign up once, or sign up to the tier, and you can decide what pace you want to go at, right? Because yeah, I think something like that with like actionable, industry relevant, actionable industry relevant topics and lessons is somewhat needed in this space, I feel. But yeah. So yeah, that's been happening. We're doing a lot of planning, a lot of work, especially over the weekend. And then next week, oh my god, I'm so excited. I can't tell you how excited I am. Just go full time into this. It's gonna be awesome. I'm excited because we have a bunch of really cool plans for it too. Nice. Let's see what else is happening, because we had like a couple of conversations in the community as well. Some people were asking for buying new laptops, you know. So that is also one thing that is always like an interesting discussion. But yeah, otherwise we've been going good. We're just hanging out. Yeah. But yeah, again, for people that are just joining, feel free to ask any questions as we dive into some portfolio reviews. So let me actually do that. Let me jump into some portfolio reviews, and then we can have some questions in the meantime. So let me switch it on over, and then we'll see. So for people that don't know what's happening, these portfolio reviews are a member exclusive thing. So if you want to get your portfolio reviewed, you can sign up, become a member. You can then get access to that on your under your perks. You can then find portfolio reviews, click on that, submit your portfolio, and you'll end up in the queue down here, which is awesome. The queue is a little bit of a mess, but that's going to be sorted out. A lot of this is going to be sorted out with the new website update that we're doing. So yeah, looks chaotic now, but I promise it's not as chaotic as it's going to be in like a week once we publish the new session. Then also the way that I grade your portfolio is going to be on 4 major pillars, right? So hireability, presentation, artistry, and techniques. You can pause the stream and read all about it here. I'm not going to go into too much of detail. Yeah, and then for today we have Kyle Smith and we have Martina. Let me share the work from Kyle first. Harry is saying, I think you've made this at the perfect time, honestly. It feels like a lot of the content is getting outdated nowadays. Well, that is one of the tricky things with running an educational thing, especially in games, right? The speed of how development works in games is so rapid. So whenever a new thing comes out, you kind of have to just like jump onto the new thing, make sure that your content is still relevant and all that kind of stuff, right? And whether we like it or not, you know, I mean, I'm not saying that we've incorporated any of this at this point, but let's say the current trend of AI, right? No, let's not even talk about AI. Let's talk about like let's talk about like Houdini coming up to the forefront, or something like that coming onto the forefront, or when I joined, like PBR becoming a thing, right? If you think about those milestones, every 3 to 5 years, there is something massive that shifts around, and you kind of have to like rewrite a bunch of your content, right? Because a lot of it gets outdated. it's interesting to see in the current day that it feels like a lot of the tools are really established already, and it feels like the core pipeline doesn't really change. Whereas I joined the industry, Substance wasn't a thing. Quixel was kind of doing like its own like Dedo thing, which was like their own texturing suite, but it was like an add-on on top of like Photoshop, which was revolutionary at the time, but it just felt really clunky because it was attached to Photoshop, right? So it's really interesting to see that like all these tools have now matured and that the pipeline hasn't changed, but that doesn't mean that the pipeline isn't gonna change, right? Because I also think what is actually the most interesting change that is maybe not even like technical in that sense, but the most interesting change that I can see is the thing that we talked about in the beginning, right? Like people starting their own studio, and how do you then take a skill set that you have, or maybe don't have if you're starting from scratch, right? But let's say in my position, how do you take your skill set, make that more applicable to something that is more sustainable for yourself, and build your own studio and all that kind of stuff around it? Because it feels with all the industry turmoil that's been going on, right? It feels like a lot of people are using that as a thing, which I think has the main benefit of, because this is still I feel strongly about this, like us as artists, we have such a gift of telling visual stories, and we can make all these like really 3D, like really cool 3D bottles, and we can make modular kits and trim sheets and all that kind of stuff, and we help games make the worlds that they make, right? But we really suck at marketing that and like finding the value for that in like an open market, right? So that's why like this weird ambiguous thing, if we have more people trying more things, we're going to get a better understanding of, let's say, how do you build a semi-sustainable business around like selling sketch fab assets, for example, right? Or how do you start up your own Patreon as like an independent artist? Like, how do you do that? There's so many amazing tools now that can really help you take things to the next level when it comes to being self-sustainable, that is still relatively underdeveloped, especially in the game art space specifically. So yeah, I think there's like interesting momentum happening on that front. Just saying that's applicable to individual careers too, right? In 3 to 5 years, new tech and workflows are coming out, and professional needs to stay abreast to stay relevant. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, as the industry shifts, you as a person need to kind of follow along with that trend too, right? So you have to remain like really relevant. I think the last biggest thing is this shift into micro polygons, right? Or nanite, or whatever the name of the technology is that you prefer. Because I think that had like the biggest impact on the workflow, right? Because you might not even need normal maps in a lot of situations. So then you have to think about like, okay, if I want to make full use of, let's say, a nanite workflow, that means that you have to like retool your workflow to make use of it, right? Ashish is saying, I can't even think materials without PBR now, specifically for realism. Yeah, I think that's true. And I think what is also interesting is where you have a mix of the two, right? Like when you have stylized art that also dips into PBR to kind of give it like that extra believability while still remaining very stylized in its nature. Very cool. Robert on a whim is saying it depends on the artist style. Yep, exactly like Ashish was saying. Definitely more relied upon in realism. But yeah. PBR can look terrible without consistency. I mean, look, if you're working in a professional development, PBR is supposed to be consistency, right? Like they go hand in hand. If you, like, in my opinion, if you're doing PBR without consistency, you're just doing PBR wrong. Right? Because that was the whole point of making like this universal system that is physically based rendering, right? So it's based in physical reality. It's not 100% accurate, but it's based in like reality, which is really interesting. And then you get like the age-old conversation of like, oh, the purists, right? Like the people that are like, oh no, it needs to be this value, and then you have the artists that are like, nah, no, we can tweak the values a little bit here and there, you know? Yeah. Hold on, let me blow my nose. I think I got hay fever coming up again. Oh, maybe I need to unmute. Hello, Fresh Mangoes. Good to see you. Josh is saying hard surface props, a lot of CAD. Example, the rise of plasticity is becoming the norm. A lot of job postings I see for asset and prop artists are now asking for it as a requirement. Yeah. Well, I think what is interesting from like a broader perspective, and that is something that I very much like agree with as well, is we should build tools to be more platform agnostic, right? So what I mean by that is that for the longest time in especially AAA, we have spent a whole bunch of time making a very specific tool set with very specific tools. Let's say Maya integrated within your game engine, right? So that if you want to work for, like, let's say Naughty Dog, I don't know if that's still the case, but I'm assuming so, that if you want to work for Naughty Dog, you need to know Maya because that's the renderer that they use, because their engine is integrated and is a part of Maya, right? So that means that if you're like a heavy Blender user, you are going to have to switch to Maya to do the work for that given studio, right? To me, it could potentially make sense, but I've always liked the approach of thinking about it in a more modular way, that you can take anyone's skill set, and if they're really good at Blender, you just have some sort of pipeline that just gets it into your engine, right? You just export, import, do all the specific things that you need to do for your pipeline, but it's becoming more platform agnostic, which is what I really like. Because coming back to what you said, Josh, plasticity is becoming the preferred tool because it allows more flexibility on the artist, right? And then let's say a couple of years in, there is something that's going to be like plasticity 2. Let's name it something else. If you then build your tool set around plasticity again, then it becomes like, oh, we've done the same thing with this tool that is now no longer relevant because people are switching over, right? So that's why I love the universal approach more. But yeah, I mean, and that also gives like artist flexibility. Oh, let's say you want to work in Blender or you want to work in plasticity. It doesn't really matter, right? And it gives business flexibility too, to the business themselves, because now they're not looking for a specific person that knows specific things. They're just looking for a person who's really good at what they do, whether they use Blender or whatever, right? Yeah, like you're saying, Josh. Yeah, it looks like it. I think what is happening in games specifically is that we see a shift going more towards Unreal Engine, right? So there's more like a centralized pipeline happening there, which has good and bad connotations to it. But the tools around it, they're just like the output that you then input into Unreal, which is what I really like. Yeah. That does bring up like the conversation of like, if you have a very specific tool that is very good at a very specific thing, it's probably always going to be better to have that tool, right? Because the downside of having Unreal Engine is that it's trying to cater towards like everything, right? Which is also not a good thing, because now you end up with a bunch of tools that are made for like, I don't know, cinematography that you have like no real need for, right? As an example. I make a separation in my head as to what is technical and tool usage and what is art, so I free myself better. Yeah, I mean, that's a good thing to do. But it's almost like they go hand in hand, right? And I think that goes to your point as well, conceptual vision, is that tools are just that, right? They're just tools. If you want to slap a hammer into slap a nail into like a plank, you're going to use a hammer, right? So from that side, it makes a lot of sense to then do the same thing with like 3D programs as well. Like if you see that, like, let's say Blender's free, it has so many free add-ons, it has really redefined like how people interact with it. I'll speak about myself, right? Like I open Blender and I feel creative in a way that I've never had with 3ds Max or like Maya, right? And I was very proficient in Maya specifically, but I've never really felt creative or that freed up compared to using Blender, right? And that is the thing. It's not making a statement about like, oh my god, you should use Blender. It's about that is a tool that works for me and the stuff that I do. And that's just the thing that we need to focus on, you know? Other studios are also adopting other engines that are also widely accessible. Example, Unity, Godot. Yeah, I'm not seeing mass adoption in like the AAA space specifically, right? It seems like most of them are just switching to Unreal Engine. And newer indie devs, they are switching to Unreal Engine as well, where like and this is according to GDC data, right? That even newer indie developers are switching to Unreal Engine just because of Unity's track record and all the stuff that they pulled like a couple of years now, right? Godot is coming up, but it's very low. It's a very long distance in the third place. But that's the thing, right? It's going to take time for it to mature and grow into the market and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I would say keep your eye on Godot. But yeah. Yeah, we'll see what it goes. But this is what I mean, right? Like the industry is constantly like redefining itself. And yeah, you need to, well, to go back to the original question, was like, we need to be able to adapt as a course to what the new thing is going to be within the industry, right? So that's also why I made the course in a modular way, so that every kind of lesson is supposed to be standing on its own feet, so that if something becomes like really irrelevant, we can just swap it out, build a new lesson, and swap it back in, right? So that's like the thought process behind it. Hello, McVal. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, we will see. There's a bunch of interesting stuff happening in like the educational space, though. Like Sierra Division is doing good stuff. Vessel Forge is doing good stuff as well when it comes to mentorships. So yeah, a lot of interesting stuff is happening in like our space specifically. So we'll see. Anyway, let's dive into our first portfolio review with Kyle. Kyle is an environment artist. Finished up the team challenges with them just recently, which was awesome. So let's see, environment artists who specialize in creating realistic assets for video games. Okay. Heavily inspired by the worlds of Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings, The Elder Scrolls, Resident Evil, and Elden Ring. That's cool. What I'm already seeing here, specializing in creating realistic assets always has this connotation of like prop specific, right? I know that assets is supposed to be broader. But if I read this and I look at your portfolio, I'm like, I'm not really seeing, like, the focus is not on assets. It's on environments, right? So keep that in mind as you write your description in relation to what you show on your portfolio, right? Cool. Let's have a look at the LinkedIn page. Associate QA tester. That is awesome. Nice. US military, managed and led a team. That's going to be really helpful for your future. You know, if you're going to be put into like a lead position or something like that, that experience is going to be really, really helpful. One thing that I would say is that I bring up a lot is give me a CV, right? Give me a CV that I can download. Put that on your LinkedIn is probably going to be the best place because that's a place where you can have it for free. You know, you just have a featured tab and you put your LinkedIn, your CV in there, and then you honestly have your CV and then your portfolio. That's it. And maybe doing something like this where you have like your open to work banner, right? So you would have your open to work. How would I structure that? Yeah, if you're getting this display of like 3 images next to each other, open to work, portfolio, CV. That would make sense to me. Right. Cool. Let's have another look here. Was there anything else on the about page? No, most of that is going to be the same. Okay, let's dive in. Let's start with the old stuff. We're always starting with the old stuff. Stylized vibes. Vegetation practice. Okay. Immediately, it is very basic, right? It is very basic in its setup. I love that you made a tool for it, but it's almost like I want to see like a beautiful tree that has like really nice shapes and really dive into like how to make something stylized to look really, really nice. This has the just there's no other way to say it than just like pretty basic, right? It feels like it's a work in progress where you need to dive into it more and add to it, right? Because if we just type in stylized tree, yeah, something like this one. I think we had a look at this page like earlier as well. But you know, even if it is just like a test, right? How did you word it yourself? Let's have a look. Vegetation practice. Even if it is just vegetation practice, aim for quality, right? Aim for how do I make it look the best that it can be so that it can be added on my portfolio. Yeah. Something like this, right? Like think about the presentation, make it nice and stylized, like really play around with the shapes, all that kind of stuff. Really make it look the best that you can. Because here's the thing, like if it's just practice, that is okay. Maybe it doesn't belong in the portfolio then, right? If it's just practice. So decide whether it is practice or you're going to use it as practice, but you're going to make it the best possible practice that you can, right? Got done with my first week of work back at the factory. My motivation to finish personal projects and getting a different job skyrocketed at least. Hell yeah, sometimes you just need to get your ass kicked into gear again, right? And like a job that you don't want to do is pretty good for that, you know? Right, this is cool. This is cool. I would elaborate on the breakdown. Give me wireframes. Give me like an overview of like all the texture maps and all that kind of stuff, right? But overall, this is pretty good. And especially now, if I go from this to this, I am like looking at a completely different portfolio now, right? So yeah, think about the consistency between all the individual pieces that you have in your portfolio and what kind of image they create from you, right? Because this is at a totally different level than this is. And again, practice is fine. Don't add it on your portfolio then. I'm gonna do my best to hide like all the sniffing and snottering of like the hay fever. I might need to go wash my face just in a bit, but we'll power through this first portfolio. Cool. Castle stone materials. Some nice. Nice materials. Really do like the round cobblestones. It kind of feels like you would need like a little bit more variation in the height of like the grout in between. But I like that the tops of them feel flat. There's like a nice breakup on the edges. Not a big fan of this iteration though. This kind of feels like it almost feels like slate roof tiles and then just buried in grout. You know, that's what it feels like. That might have to do with the directionality of just all the rocks being in like the same sort of angle. That kind of gives me that feel. Presentation is pretty basic at this point, right? I don't mind these images. I would honestly start with like an image like this first, make it widescreen, and then hit them with like the best image that you have first, and then go into like a material sphere, right? It's the same thing as whenever we have like a bigger portfolio piece. We start out with the beauty shot, and then we do the breakdowns below, right? So hit them over the head with the beauty shot first, make it widescreen, make it really impactful, and then as you scroll down, then you'll see like the material sphere and then like the breakdowns of all of it. The way that I would do the breakdown is, again, try to separate these things out, maybe a GIF. Try to make it like engaging, right? Because these are just like 4 images, but it doesn't really tell me that much, right? I mean, I know that it's a base color and a normal and like roughness and height, you know, but it's not exciting, you know? So think about like how you can excite people and really take your presentation to the next level. Like a GIF where you have like a material sphere, and like the material sphere every couple of seconds, like let's say 2 seconds or something like that, flips between base color, normal, roughness, height, and then a full render, right? That is going to be way more impactful because it's trying to keep my attention, right? But yeah, combination of ZBrush for the initial shapes. The workflow always started out with the initial shape creation. All of this stuff is cool, right? So I skimmed through it really quickly. So you're using ZBrush, initial shape creation, then doing it in Substance Designer. I can't see any of that in the visuals, right? What could be cool here is at the bottom, you just have like my workflow, and then you have like ZBrush sculpt on the left, cleaned up, like baked down individual like height map, then use those height maps into Substance Designer, and you know, that creates like that visual image of you just going through like, hey, this is the workflow that I used from like step 1 in ZBrush sculpting to like all the way at the end. That is way more engaging, right? I would actually need to find, I'm going to write this down. I need to find like examples of all this stuff because yeah, it is somewhat recurring. So it would be cool if I can find like resources for it. How to showcase materials and workflows specifically. Cool. Right, moving on to the next thing. Galactic Adventure. I worked with a team of artists, created a space-inspired experience using Unreal. Awesome. That's cool. All right. So what I like is that you're trying to take the presentation to the next level, right? Which is awesome. However, and I'll be very picky about this, right? Like, I don't really get the value of this all that much. However, I'm not going to tell you to remove it. what I would do is focus on the readability of it, right? Because now it's almost like you're doing a composition, but like everything is fighting for your attention. Make the background like way more subtle, and have the focus on the actual node structure, right? Yeah, the way that I would present this is if this is your node graph, right? Try to go through it, make it more interactive, do something that is more interesting for me to look at, right? Because now it's almost like, hey, I want to show you my workflow, but I'm just gonna show you like a still image of like all the nodes that I've used. And it's almost, okay, this is gonna be a stupid example, but it's almost like we're watching a cooking show, but the only thing that we get to see is the chicken when it's done and the recipe in the book. And all the stuff in between, nah, doesn't matter. You know, I'm not gonna show that. So I want to see the chicken get made, you know? Like, what kind of seasoning do you put on it? Like, what kind of temperature does the oven need to go into? Like, all that kind of stuff. That's what I want to see. Harry is saying, best for this is a GIF of your height progress or something. Something like that is a good shout, honestly. Something like that where it becomes like more engaging and you can kind of see the buildup of the material, right? Or even just like the globe spinning and then just like doing the progress of the material over time, right? That could be really cool. And then also if you're doing something like this, asset sculpted in ZBrush, I think that's cool. What is the high poly, the low poly topology like? What are the texture sizes like? How did you use your EVs? How did you your textures themselves? Like, you know, give me something to look at, right? Cool. So we talked a lot about presentation already. Let's have a look. Right, okay. Interesting. So here we get into the issue that I was running into before, where like the directionality of the tiles kind of makes it look like we slapped the floor onto a wall. If you know what I mean. Right? Because I think even Castle Stone Materials, very generic name, right? But this feels more like a floor at the moment than it does like a wall. And that's why it looks so weird, because you just have like a cobblestone like wall going up to the top, right? So yeah. That would be something to fix. Yeah, something like this. Like even the little sliver that you can see here, like the quick photo bash they did, that feels like a wall, right? Compared to your cobblestone inspired pattern. Because with walls, you usually have like more irregularity between shapes. Because it's just like, oh, we found stuff, especially old stone walls. It's just like, okay, we broke up a big chunk of rock. Now we just added here and then we filled it up with like smaller pieces of rock and like, okay, that's how we build a wall, right? Yeah. Let's talk about presentation again, or maybe... Because your focus is on the door, right? I think in this case, what you could have done is just have the door and literally have a cutaway of like the tileable material around it so that there's more focus on the door actually. So you literally just have like, I don't know, it kind of follows a pattern a little bit. Something like this, and then the rest of it just gets removed. Because now so much of it gets kind of taken up by like the wall, right? So that would be like a quick fix here to have more of the focus be on the wall. I would also say that I would love to see a more in-depth sculpt pass, because it feels It feels like these rocks, they still have their blocky shape from when you did the block out. And then you try to bash up like the edges with like brushes and yeah, brushes and masks and all that kind of stuff. But it didn't really do a good job of it, right? So I want to see like a more in-depth interpretation of this. Because if you're trying to replicate something like this, you need to go to the source, go to like the real life reference and see how this stuff would look in real life and how this door would be inset into the wall, right? And also because we're doubling up on like images here. Doubling up meaning that like this is literally just using like a material that you have already presented in another project. Don't have it here. Just have the focus on the door itself. Ba-bum. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy about the size of the project though. The size of the project is really good. Now it comes down to like, okay, how do we take this to the next level by adding more detail, especially in the outer stone? And maybe even because a lot of the beauty comes from the door itself. Like I would even think like maybe we can make a less dominant frame. We can probably like sink it back into the frame or like bring it forward into the frame so that the door pops more out of the frame. Because now it's just like purely inset. I don't know how I feel about that. And then texturing wise, a lot can be improved, right? Where it's kind of hard to even tell because you don't really have like detail shots necessarily. Like the texturing, I can read the patterns, right? So there's like a stripe going this way, stripe going this way, stripe going this way. I would treat every individual plank already with like an initial base layer that is going to be different from all the rest of the planks, right? We need to separate all these planks out into like individual masks and then have it feel like it came from like a different section of the same tree, you know? So yeah. A lot to level up here when it comes to the texturing, especially for the planks. I think you've done a pretty good job on the texturing of the metal, though. The metal looks like pretty convincing, so pretty happy with that. Right, and then also when it comes to presentation, I like where this is going, right? But also give me some game art, you know? How many polys are we talking about? Like, what is the texture size? What is all the breakdown stuff, right? Like, what are some of the statistics behind this? Right. Let me see. Sometimes what actually can be really revealing about a person's references is that in this case, for example, what I immediately can tell is that photo reference is as big as just game reference. I want photo reference to be like 10 times the amount of size. Because that is hinting to me that, for example, when it comes to sculpting one of these pillars, right? You don't know what that actually looks like because you don't have actual reference for it, right? Like a broken pillar, sure, you have this guy here, but do you know what it looks like up close? And that is oftentimes very revealing about like reference images. I mean, I don't know if I still have it. Do I even have like PureRef still installed? I'll let this load for a second. Just to make a point, right? And I'm not saying that you have to be as mental as I am with this stuff. But it's just an indication that like the amount of references that I see on a person's portfolio when they share their references is oftentimes very revealing that they need more references. Because even in here, right, like even from the pillars and like the sculpture that you've done, you have some like very distance reference, but you don't have like up close reference. So I know that you've already struggled with like trying to replicate the detail that is needed for those references, from those references, right? And you can kind of see that, right? Like if you zoom into the sculpt feels very basic, and that comes from not having up close references to kind of help you during the process of sculpting a block of sandstone, right? So yeah, very revealing. Very, very revealing. And that is honestly the thing that you need to have, is that eye for detail, and that is only because you have gathered like so much ref. So to go back to like my ref board for like my medieval project, right? I have game references here for sure, but that is like a small part of what I need, right? This stuff is the real deal here, right? Like if you like, how do they break up like pigmentation? This is only for like a painter shop, right? So the different bowls they have, the different colors, how they affect like the tiles underneath them, like the setup of it, yeah. And this is all just for like one thing, right? And you can even see me just being like, okay, what kind of color is this? And what kind of color is relevant to the place that I'm trying to rebuild, right? Because in certain regions, you can only get certain colors just because those are the pigments that are in the earth, right? And that kind of attention to detail, that is really what sets you apart from a lot of other people, right? And that is just a paint shop. And there's like links here too. There's like a video for me to watch. But yeah, even carts, right? Different kind of carts. And just looking at like all the details, like how the wood is split. Here as well, like how these wooden pins, most of it is not metal. You have like metal stuff in here, but like these wooden plugs kind of keep it together, right? Those details are really interesting. These are all like movie props, by the way. These are not like real things. But yeah, still interesting to kind of give you like a real life reference, right? And you can tell like a lot of research, right? A lot of research. If you do want to make something and have it as close as possible, like resemble the real thing, you need to be able to gather a lot of references and distill it to what is important about that prop, right? For example, this pillar here, real life, they make them into multiple pieces and then just add them together, right? That's how these pillars get made. And if that is not reflected, that is like, I mean, I'm being pretty harsh here, you know, but I'm just thinking of like a stream of conscious. If that is not reflected in your art, then I know that you already don't have like that attention to detail, right? That's what we're looking for. That's what we want. Same thing here. This step is attached to like the main piece of the foundation, right? Which means that this whole thing is carved as one thing. So what did they do? Did they carve it in place? Probably not, because it's in the middle of the forest, right? Right. So how did they move that there? How did they build it? A lot of interesting stuff to think about there. I'm not going to ramble on too much about that point, but yeah. Let's see. And again, when you're doing these breakdowns, right? I think having a breakdown like this is a good start. Give me poly count, UVs, wireframes, texture sizes, anything like that, you know. When was this, by the way? 2 years ago. Okay. What's the last year? Okay, interesting. So relatively old then, compared to some of the newer stuff. So I'm curious. Nice. Okay. This already looks really good. Also from just like an attention to detail perspective that we talked about, right? Yeah. It's already a strong first impression. Hello, Galazar. Hello, Emsart. Hello, Eisendrag. Good to see you all here. Hello, Marian. Good to see you. It's been ages. Oh my god. How are you doing, Maru? Hope you're doing well. Very simplistic geometry placed can help fully integrate all with others. Okay. Again, like, it's a good start, right? I like what you're doing here. You're showing me how stuff is broken up, but you're not really showing me like how dense these stacks are, right? Like, I don't know how many polys are in like a single stack of like these grass bushes, for example. The environment was primarily made using SpeedTree, Megascans, and Unreal Engine 5. I wanted to create a scene to better understand the landscape. Big shout out to Michael Girard. Awesome. I've seen his stuff floating about, so that's awesome. Cool. But yeah, more breakdowns. Not going to repeat myself too much. This video content stuff, I like where this is going. Keep this stuff up because this is like a pretty engaging way to showcase like, hey, this is what I've built. This is how I interact with the systems, you know? It's showcasing like a deeper understanding. What I would try to do is do a little bit of video editing on top of this, so that if you're showing the details panel, which is really good, I like that you're doing this, but have your background be like full screen what you're doing, and then the details panel can be like in the top right on top of it or something like that, you know, as you're adjusting things. Small little tips can really help, and it's literally you're using the same track, right? Cutting out, I'm not going to go into detail there, but yeah. So do this sort of stuff that makes it look like way more professional. It's almost like every piece of art that you put on here needs to be almost like a product release. Like, think about it as you're gonna sell it to people, right? Because you are basically selling not your product, but your services to a company, right? So you basically have to ask the question every time, like, hey, if I see this, would I buy this? Right? That's probably like a helpful framework for everyone to look at. And then we've got the team challenge. It was lovely to work with you, Kyle. Let's see the tower stuff. Yes. Cool. We're closer with Cade. I think we already looked at this. I think we stumbled upon this like randomly like a couple of weeks ago. But yeah. Okay, so overall feedback. You have a solid understanding of like all the individual components, right? You know how to make like a really good looking prop yourself. That's seen here. You know how to make materials. Even though with like all the improvements that I said, like that is a very solid base to work from. And the rest of it kind of feels more that they're experiments rather than actually I'm gonna take this seriously. I'm gonna sounds so harsh, right? But like it kind of feels like they're experiments and they're not really built with the purpose of, okay, this is gonna be the next project for my portfolio, right? That is a bit harsh. That doesn't apply to some of these things that I'm seeing, right? I think this one is coming along very nicely. I'm still somewhat curious on where do you get the trees and all that kind of stuff from, right? Because you do have Megascans in here. This environment was primarily used using SpeedTree Megascans. Okay, so you have used Megascans, you've made this yourself, which means that the grass on the floor is what you did, and then the rest of it is built by someone else. Which again, instead of it being the full frame, being like, oh my god, this looks really good, which was my initial impression, right? It goes from like, okay, it still looks good, but I can basically only look at this stuff. Right? It was kind of, yeah. it sours it a little bit again. It kind of again goes into more like the experiment kind of realm, right? Like it's you're following tutorial, you're applying the lesson, but you then just, it almost feels like you follow the tutorial and then you put the tutorial as like the final thing online. If that makes sense. What I want to see you do is take those lessons and build something yourself with, right? That would be a good next step. So let me try to condense this. I need to do one thing here. Hold on, give me just a sec. Because yeah, that's what it comes down to really, right? It's like, okay, taking your stuff to the next level with like little experiments is good. Don't put them on the portfolio. Just whenever you feel like, okay, this is good enough to showcase my portfolio, add it on the portfolio and make it look like the best that you can, right? So I would say this feels very out of the ordinary on your portfolio at the moment. So I would remove that. This one feels a bit weird. For this one, I think you can keep it, but I would definitely look at the wall and the current setup to make it more about the door than about like its surroundings, right? This has a lot of question marks. I would honestly say that this probably needs to go because now you have this environment here. I would keep this and focus your efforts on creating like the next environment, right? So let's see. This you can keep, that you can keep with some work. That you can keep as well. Yeah, remove this. Yeah. Because what we want to do is we want to showcase, like, again, only the best possible work on your portfolio, right? And that means, hold on, let me just do one thing here. Okay. Cool, should be good. So we want to only showcase the best possible stuff on your portfolio, right? So if anything gets outdated and you feel like, hey, look, I've learned so much, I don't think this is relevant anymore, just remove it. Just remove it from your portfolio. There's this idea of like, yeah, but I want to show progression. Like, a studio doesn't care about your progression. Like, honestly. Like, a studio cares about like your current output and how it can be used to increase the profitability of their game, right? That's what it comes down to, really. Progression is not a part of that. I think the individual artist might care about progression, but that is outside the bounds of you getting hired, right? So yeah, focus on that. Let me go back here, refresh it. There we go. Okay, so what's it out in the portfolio? So I think what I've seen more recently, the presentation has become a bit better, which I like. You're doing more video content, which is also going in the right direction. So your presentation, art, and you're going into the right direction. However, your breakdowns still lack a ton of detail. Detail or information, right? Whenever you're doing a breakdown, you want to basically showcase, hey, I can do this, including all the technical specifications, and here's the way that I've done it, right? Because for the most of your projects, it kind of feels like, hey, here's a beautiful end result. And even in this one, you're showcasing stuff. This is already going into a good direction. But even this, like, really think about, like, what is this showing to me, right? Really think about it. Because even if it is showing something, it feels like it's not relevant to myself as a person in recruitment, right? Because what I want to see is, I want to see that you can build things that are performant, that look good, and keep in mind like technical specifications or restrictions of games, right? Which means that if you're showcasing something like this, for example, I don't care about the wireframe here. I care about the wireframe here. Like, I want to see how many polys like all this stuff has, right? That's what I care about. So find a way to present that to me in the easiest thing, because I can sort of look at here and I can then be like, yeah, that's a bit too much, but it depends on how you added them to the image here, right? Like to the assets. So try to make it as easy as possible. So do something like this, add like the wireframe on top of it, and then have like your poly count up here, pick like a nice looking font. Doesn't need to be fancy, nice looking font. And then also give me texture sizes too, right? Like let's do a texture breakdown too. Like, hey, these are like 4 clusters on my grass. I mean, you're probably doing like one big cluster and like small flowers on top of it, which is fine. But show me that breakdown, right? Because now you have me guessing rather than knowing, which is dangerous. So do this for a breakdown, right? And show everything to me. Like make it super, super easy for me to get what you've done because you're laying it out for me. And that can be applied across the board, right? So show UVs, textures, texture size, your poly count, and wireframe. Or anything else that is relevant. And then we talked about like what you want to be aiming for the future, right? Like cleaning up. So I would advise you to really clean up your portfolio. And then for future stuff, what I want to see you do is take something like this sort of scope and scale, right? A door with a wall, but try to tell me a story. Because this right now is a door in a wall, right? Who lives there? Who goes by? What is this door hiding? Like anything like that. Give me a little bit more context, right? And again, like I've made a presentation on some small environments that are like really feasible to do, right? I'll bring a couple of examples again. So where is it? I think over here somewhere, right? Even if you look at the dioramas, right? If you look at the different dioramas, these things, super feasible, but what really helps is that most of them tell a compelling story, right? Or they're trying to say something rather than just being, oh, it's just a door, right? Most of these are trying to tell something. They're trying to tell a story. So yeah, focus on that. And aim for higher quality, right? Higher quality. This is nice. Where can we find a diorama board? It's honestly not finished. I need to carve out some time to kind of finish it up. But I can... What can I do? Can I do something? Can I do something here? Not really. I mean, I'll link it in the chat and then you can have a look at it yourself. But keep in mind that this is not ready yet, but I'll add it. There we go. Right, so hopefully that makes sense, Kyle. Let me do your scores. So your presentation, it leaves a lot to be desired at the moment, right? But I already like in your latest pieces that you're getting the full picture, right? The presentations are becoming like way more interesting on the artistic side too. So yeah, we're getting there. We're getting up there, which is good. Yeah, artistry. Let's have a quick look again. So here's the weird thing, right? Like I like this piece, but I can only judge it on like 10% of like the bottom, which is not ideal. I like what you've done there, but yeah. This is old. I wasn't really a big fan of it. This has some potential, but needs a bit of work. So yeah, we're probably gonna go with this. I think techniques, honestly, I can see that you're doing something, right? But you're not really telling me. This might have information you don't want to share yet, Tim. No. It's just it is just like it contains some stuff that was just like grabbed from other presentations. So it's completely fine. But all the images in that presentation are clickable, so you can go and check them out. This is basically something that I used for some new mentorships that I was running with the school. So this was like a quick sort of presentation that I was just doing live with them. Yeah, currently hireability. It is the reason why this is so hard is because I see glimpses of what you're doing and you're doing it really well, right? Like something like this has a lot of potential, but you're not showcasing me how you approached it, right? Which would be like the first thing. So there are glimpses of like being hireable, but then you kind of hit me with like a left hook occasionally with like just throwing this stuff in here, which is like lower quality than some of the stuff that you're surrounding it with, which is weird. So that confusion makes it like somewhat difficult to get you hired at the moment, Kyle. Yeah. So yeah, carve out time, aim for high quality stuff, and really go for smaller environments, but make them rich with story, make the props more detailed, and yeah, try to push the textures to the next level as well. So yeah, I hope that was helpful, Kyle. Yeah, keep me up to date. Keep me up to date. But I was saying this presentation is awesome. Thank you, even though it's like a really work in progress. But hey, yeah. So that is honestly like a little tease of the stuff that I want to do more of. Remember like the presentation that I've done like a couple of months ago, with like how to start your environments, right? I want to do more of that stuff. That stuff is really fun. I love putting together like presentations and like showcasing like how you can do more stuff. So yeah, that would be one of the things that I want to do more of in the future. Sort of stuff like this. So that presentation that I just shared, actually, that would be turned into like a presentation that I'm probably going to live stream at a certain point. Really talking about like, okay, how can you distill your own sort of skill set? How do you figure out to know where you are? And then how do you build a project around that, right? That was a live stream that I did like a couple months ago. Let me see if I can find it. Because yeah, that also hints at like an improvement that I need to make of like really cleaning up like the live tab, because it is freaking chaotic. It also didn't help that we just had like some technical difficulties during that stream. But here you go. That's like the presentation that I've done like a couple of months ago. Two presentations, hype. Let's go. Yeah, I want to do more of that stuff. I think that's really, really needed. Let's see. A couple of questions in the chat then. So Galazar is asking, I do have a question about the refs in the concept art you see. Wait, I do have a question about the refs if on the concept art you see X. Okay, when you see X, but when you're trying to find refs to X, you don't find it, but you find Y, and they are not similar to what you see. What do? So there's always going to be cases where you can't find like 100% the same thing, right? But you can extrapolate some of the details from relevant items. So let's say, I don't know, a person uses like a very specific reference of like a power drill, you know? You don't need to find that specific power drill, because if you're going for textual detail, you can just get that from like another power drill that kind of has like the same sort of like paint information or something like that, right? So it doesn't have to be 100% the same stuff. It just has to be relevant enough and contain the reference. Well, it needs to contain the content inside that reference of what you want or what you need to have, right? That's why if you look at the, I'll open it again. We go through my PureRef again. Let's see. Let me see. Yeah, let me load that again. But yeah, that's why usually the way that I break this down, and actually I have a really good lesson in the upcoming course about reference gathering that goes through all this. I've made like a bunch of video content for it as well. It basically teaches you how to like do all this stuff, right? But let me show you. So that even I have to go in and look for like specific texture references, right? Let me look at something that's more relevant. Because for example, like this, right? Like this handmade like hammer with like an iron head on it, right? If you can't find this specific one, you can look at like other like iron head hammers that are like handmade, and you can kind of extrapolate like, oh, okay, this is how they're made and this is how they get over time, and you know, there's some leeway there. Because another big thing is that when we do a translation from like concept, it's not about 100% accurate replication of what the concept is showing you, which sounds weird, but it's about capturing the essence of the concept, right? So for like a single asset, sure, it might be more straightforward, right? But if we're looking at like a ref for like a concept art, let me see. So for example, this one. This for me was like a ref that I used a lot in the creation of my medieval scene, even though it looks nothing like it. But I wanted to capture the feeling of like this medieval painting and the colors and the color scheme and all that kind of stuff. And I wanted to then use that in my paint, right? So the purpose of this as a piece of reference has a completely different connotation than, let's say, this stuff here, right? And that's why you'll see me use references in different ways, where something like this is more about like, okay, what is this building? Like a basket weaver building, right? What does that look like? Focus on the big stuff, right? There's like a little shack next to it, like planted next to a tree. And then this is just like the general shape, and they're doing like a lot of their activities outside, which is cool. And then this is just like a bunch of baskets, right? But I can put those two things together and I can make like a more cohesive picture, right? But that's because like this is focusing more on the bigger picture. That is focusing more on like the immediate picture, right? And then I have like other references where it's like, okay, what does a basket actually look like, right? Like what does like a hand-woven basket look like? That little lip here probably has to do with just them using like a different tree, right? That's where you get like different gradations and like how they weave baskets together. Interesting How can we incorporate more in that stuff, right? But hopefully I'm getting across what I'm trying to say, is that not every image that you have on your ref board has the same purpose for your use case, right? For your environment. But yeah, thank you for the questions. Feel free to ask more questions. Let's see. Oh, and welcome to the community, Rio. That's appreciated. And I think you asked a question as well, right? So Rio Mendes is asking, good morning. What is the line between environment artist working in Houdini and ending up hired as a technical artist, making tools for destructible assets and sequences? The line is very fine. If you see, if you want to simplify it, do you see yourself working in Houdini 8 hours a day, or do you see yourself working in an environment 8 hours a day? That is like a very simple difference there for you to actually see where you want to position yourself as, right? Because a tech artist gets hired to be the bridge between an artist and a programmer, right? That's why they're there. They have the artistic insight, but then they can also build like the technical tools and the expertise there. Because I can guarantee you, and you see me build like tools live on stream. I mean, that's ages ago now, but I've built a lot of my tools myself. I wouldn't consider myself a technical artist because that's not what I like to do. Could I get hired as one? Potentially. Yeah. Potentially. If I redo bits of my portfolio and I make more appropriate stuff for technical art, for sure. But that's the thing. If you want to get hired as a technical artist, you need to be able to showcase that you're the bridge between the two. If you're just an environment artist and you're making like some stuff on the side as a Houdini artist, you're not going to get hired as a technical artist. Because a lot of environment artists can build like simple tools themselves, and a lot of them do, but they don't end up being a technical artist. Galazar is saying to use refs to your benefit to capture the feeling and idea, and how get to connect it all, if I understand correctly. Yeah, so you need to use your references for a specific thing that you don't know about, right? So if your references are used to help you better understand how to texture something, those references are going to be more close up in detail rather than, hey, I don't know what this basket weaver looks like, right? Those references are going to be completely different. Because, how should I say this? You don't need to reference gather just because someone tells you to reference gather. Sounds weird, but bear with me. The reason why you gather references is for you yourself to help build yourself a better understanding of how things work, so that you can get better at translating it into the thing that you want to translate it into, right? Usually 3D. Because I can speak from experience that in the beginning, when I was gathering references, people told me to gather reference, and I would gather reference, but I wouldn't use it. So you have to realize that the references that you gather are there to help you. They're not trying to indicate that you lack a certain skill or something like that. They're here to help you fast track on getting better at the things that you don't understand currently. Because there's a whole bunch of things where I could make like an assumption, right? Like, I've made a lot of medieval stuff now. So I can probably make like medieval stuff from like several regions, but I don't know what medieval stuff in, let's say, Eastern Europe looks like compared to like Western Europe, right? Because they still have different inputs and different ideas. So what I need to do is, okay, I know what Western medieval architecture looks like. Let me have a look at like Eastern medieval architecture, right? So it's more like it's helping you explore something, and it's trying to fill in gaps in your understanding. And if that understanding is saying like, okay, I don't know how to texture this, then you just need to find like a lot of like close-up references on, let's say, eBay for the thing that you're trying to make, right? As an example. Right. Should we go into our next portfolio review? We have got Martina Ojenard. Is that how I'm pronouncing that? Sorry if I mispronounced that. Martina Ojenard from Uppsala in Sweden. Awesome. 3D artist specializing in realistic environments, props, and modular asset workflows. I enjoy creating cohesive assets and materials that support strong, believable worlds, with a strong focus on texturing and material definition. My background in game and graphic design supports an understanding of visual consistency and production workflows, adaptable, collaborative, and always exploring new techniques. Okay, cool. Galzar saying, got it. Thanks for the explanation. No worries. Thank you for the question. Right, let's have a look at your external links first. Let me go to, you have a blog. Photogrammetry, okay, interesting. We'll dive into that just in a bit. Stellaris, it's been a while since I played that game. Oh, 2D environment artist, ooh. I was like, what is that? But it's probably Uppsala University, right? That makes sense. So these are all like game jams from the school, I would assume. A vertical slice course. So yeah, these are all like game jams. Yeah, we had a question about this in the community, right? Like, where do you add game jams? And I think, it's an interesting question because you have to put them somewhere, right? Because I think they add value. There's no disputing that. I wonder where the most efficient ways to place them would be. The most efficient place. Because in here, right, like this really doesn't matter that much to me necessarily. So I would probably put them on your portfolio and then just have like game jams or something like that on top of it, you know? And then showcase like your favorite stuff from the game jam so that it becomes a part of your portfolio rather than on your about page and potentially clogging up all this stuff. Because this is well known, right? This is well known. People know Stellaris. It's like a pretty popular game. So that is going to create like, oh, okay, worked on Stellaris. Cool stuff. Whereas this stuff, it doesn't have the same kind of impact, right? So I'm just thinking from like an impact perspective that it might be better to put it on your portfolio. Anyway. Cool, we got CV here, we got your portfolio, and then you've got like some other featured posts. Those are awesome. Let's have a look at the CV. Oh, I need to click it this way. Okay. This is an interesting one. I have not figured out myself on how to tackle this issue, right? The benefit of, I mean, you also have like your phone number on here, which is, I would prefer you not to, because you're posting something that's very private, very public. And I'm fully aware that I'm now sharing it on stream, which is making me somewhat uncomfortable. But I mean, it is there, right? The thing that I was talking about is you're sharing this now, and the benefit about like having it in PDF is that I can click on like all the links, right? Because this looks like a link, but now because it is like a JPEG or a PNG, I can't click it. But I don't know if you can add like a PDF on your CV, on like your LinkedIn. So yeah, I would need to look into that, what the best place would be. Anyway, 3D artist with 44 years of experience in the industry, skilled in modeling, texturing, materials, and animation. I'm supported by a foundation in game and graphic design, complemented by videography and photography skills. Cool. A couple of recommendations here immediately. Work experience, you probably want to move that up. The way that I always looked at this is like you want to kind of show like, hey, I have been working in the industry as best as you can, right? Or like industry relevant stuff. You want to hit them over the head with that first because that is the most important thing on the CV, right? It's highly likely that people have already looked at your portfolio. They already have looked at your LinkedIn somewhat. So having the work experience up here is probably going to help a lot. So introduction first, which is good. Then your work experience second, which is not even a 2. Oh my god. Work experience second. And then you can have your education and then skills, software, and then certifications at the bottom, right? Also think about a drone license. Interesting. Also think about your achievements and where you want to place them. Because I think these two are super relevant to the work that you're doing in games, right? But now it kind of feels like you just shoved it into a corner and it kind of feels like, yeah, that's something that I just like do on the side, right? What I would potentially do. Certifications, languages, achievements. Okay, if we condense the fonts, we make them all the same size, I can see, for example, your skills and softwares is using this. And you can have a section where it's like certs, languages, and then achievements. Or maybe even we put achievements first because we want to increase the importance, right? So maybe achievements goes first. And good luck with deciphering my scribbles as well. But you can see that what I'm trying to figure out is, okay, what is the most important thing in terms of relevancy to the person that's going to be reading my CV, right? Because the further you put it down to the page, it's almost like the way to look at it is 100% of the people are probably going to read your name, right? Because it's up top, it's in bold, that makes sense. The lower you go down on the page, we're probably hitting at like 10% at this point, you know? So that means that anything that has a lot of value, you want to move that up to the page. So work experience, your achievements, I might even consider, what would we do? Work experience, then achievements. Maybe if you are a Women's in Games ambassador, I would, and you're still doing that, I would honestly add that to your work experience. And make that maybe the top 2 lines or something like that, right? So you have co-founder, creative director, cool. Next thing, Women in Games ambassador, and then GD, GEDI, Jedi. I don't know how to pronounce that. And then a Jedi in Games co-founder, right? Put that third or something like that, right? So yeah. Harry is saying, I'm sure recruiters just quickly scan over your work experience and go on to the next. Yeah, but in terms of recruiters, that is probably going to be like the most important thing to them, right? So I think you're right. Whenever you're trying to maximize for like, well, anyone is going to just scan over your CV, just point blank, right? Like full stop. So it's about like, okay, how much value do we give them while scanning, right? Because still this rule applies. Like the further you have to scan, the lower the percentages of people still scanning, right? So I would honestly put these achievements in like your work experience, put your work experience as like top 1 thing, and then have education below it, skills, certifications, and languages all the way at the bottom, right? And now we've basically optimized for like, hey, here's all the important stuff you need to know about me. And then sure, if you want to hire me, I still know these languages, I have these certifications, and this is my education, right? But yeah, that's the way that I would structure this. Because I can say this. I don't know how many people know about this. Not a lot of companies care about this, especially if you're an artist in the games industry. Not a lot of people care about like how many points you've gotten or how well you've done a degree. Kind of sucks. But most of your relevancy is just gonna come from portfolio, 100%. I keep bringing up this. So the only thing that is relevant there, is your. If you have a bachelor, that means that it makes it way easier for you to apply for a visa, right? That is something that I always want to bring up. So there is a benefit there, but it's more like a checkbox. It's not like, oh my god, they have a bachelor, so that means that we definitely need to hire them, right? Those days are over. Out into the blue is saying, interesting. Never thought of putting the achievements as work. Yeah, because you are an ambassador, right? So you're doing this as like a semi-official position, and you are also like a co-founder. So I would say that those are like more work experience rather than achievements. For example, achievements for me, for my personal CV, would be something like written 5 articles for 80 level, written 2 articles for 3D artist, like magazine number, blah blah blah. I can't remember the name, the numbers. Winning NVIDIA, God, I can't remember the name of that challenge even. Like winning top spot in like the NVIDIA challenge from like a couple of years ago. And then getting honorable mention on one of the ArtStation challenges too, right? So those things are achievements because it's like you do them once and you get the achievements and then you just move on, right? Where your Women in Game Ambassador role is like a role within that organization that you just have present there, right? LinkedIn technically has the co-founding role as a part of my experience. That's good. And the Women in Games Ambassador is now volunteer work. Yeah, that makes sense. Is that in here as well? Just wondering. Co-founder, that's good. And I think you can add like the Women in Games Ambassador in here too, right? Honestly, it's just stacking as much as you can up on your CV and your LinkedIn, right? So that, because again, same rule applies here. I think, I don't know, 20% of people are probably going to click this button, so they don't even know the rest of what you're doing. But I do know that you're a co-founder here and that you're a co-founder for like your own thing as well, right? So yeah, if you can add that in here, that would be good. Cool. Thank you. Thank you for sharing the CV. It's always interesting to see people's CVs. Galazar is asking, what about shipped games? Is that not an achievement? No, that's work experience. The way that I put this on my CV, let me see, where's my CV again? It's a bit outdated, but I'll show it anyway. Nope, don't need that. CV. Which one's my latest? This is always a gamble because I have so many iterations of it. Pom pom. Cover letter CV. This one. Cool. So the way that I've personally done this is I just add this here. So environment artist at Frontier Developments. I worked on Planet Zoo, Planet Coaster, and Jurassic World Evolution. Right? That's the way that I'm doing it. You can separate it if you wanted to, right? You can say, hey, these are all my ship titles in like a place that is a bit more upfront and visible, right? So you could have ship titles up here, let's say. Let's say ship titles goes here with all your ship titles, and then you go into your work experience. That could also work. There's honestly no golden rule here, right? But I want people to think about this in a way where it's like, okay, what is most important to what people are gonna see, right? And you'll see this as well in my CV. All of it is dominated by work experience. My skills, my software, languages, education is all just shoved to the side because that is less relevant, right? So I want the oh my god, the primary focus is going on to the work experience, right? That's what I want you to focus on. Cool. Let's dive into the portfolio then, Martina. Starting with the old work again. Animation stuff. Yeah, even on this, like old work, like we see the topology, more statues for 3D printing. That's cool. I need to get a 3D printer. I want to start printing my own stuff. That's cool. I think this is cool because it kind of ties into your role, right? That you have like a co-founder of this, which is cool. I would say that this is more. It's more like a little. It's a little snack, if you know what I mean. It's not relevant to like the main course, but it's like a little snack. It's fun to see, you know? And I don't think it kind of hurts your portfolio because the quality is still quite nice. It has a different purpose than game art, right? So, but yeah, that's cool. Mosaic material. Yeah, I mean, you're probably going to see this coming from a mile away. I don't see the benefit of something like this, right? I can't see what nodes you're using. I don't really see the value of something like this. Do something that's more interesting and grabs my attention, right? On any material, kind of breaking it down into like the individual maps instead is probably going to be good. That gives me like a better overview of everything. And also let me know what kind of what the texture size is, right? Especially during your presentation. And I would assume that a lot of that is going to be relevant for these as well. So I'm probably going to skip through most of these. Yeah. Okay, so this is going into the right direction. I would then just still separate like all the individual textures into their own things, right? Because that still gives me this is it's not that it's bad, right? It gives me an okay idea of all the individual maps that are involved, but I would still love to see the full thing for like full transparency, right? Let's see. Hand painted wood. This one feels more like a little texture practice kind of thing, where it doesn't feel like a finished project at this point. That would be something to take into account. Like, how do you take this to something that looks finished? You know, do like a little bit of a presentation where you have like hand painted wooden floor, like a little trim, like a little wall section, right? Do something more with it and make it into like a little vertical slice of an environment. I think that could be pretty cool. And again, the typical rules of a breakdown still apply to that, right? But it's weird. This feels more like a little fun little thing. Not for the portfolio, necessarily. And painted tiles. Okay, more realistic approach to the steam baths. During my last year in university, I was able to join Goldborough Studios, an independent studio in Wales. Nice. That's awesome. Thanks for being here, Galazar. I appreciate your time, and have a good weekend. Trimsheet sculpted in ZBrush. Trimsheet textured in Substance Painter. That's awesome. Again, same breakdown rules apply, right? Like, show me the texture size, show me how you used it, like show me the wireframe of all these modules that you've made. Yeah. Oh, I saw something. You're calling yourself out. Now I would like to continue working on this project to make it more alive. New details, props, and maybe some plans. It's been 2 years. I don't think any new update for this is going to come real soon, right? This is sort of like, it's a fun little thing, you know, like you probably intend to like build on top of it later. Most people don't do that, myself included. Sometimes I never want to mention anything like this because it's making a promise that you can't keep. for the most part. So yeah. Let's see. Let's go to the overview again. Curious about some more of the recent work. Ships. Ship materials. Sparkle gold. Making greebles. That's fun. Oh, okay, yeah. 2D images here. Cool. Okay. If you have the opportunity here, I mean, the breakdown is pretty good, right? I like what you've done here so far. I like you showing off like greeble material and also the high poly of the greeble. That is like pretty interesting to see. What I would say is, no, I was gonna say like it would be nice to show the wireframe of it, right? But this is the difference between personal work and professional work. Is that with personal work you usually have a lot more freedom to just display whatever you wanted, right? Whereas in this, you might not have that same sort of freedom. Cool. Cool little work. All right. Worked on this personal project made for modular environments course at CGMA. RIP CGMA. Okay. I love that you're doing this, by the way. Like the little design touches, right? I think we even talked about this in our community, in our community hangout. That I like that you're integrating some of your design work and your typography and all that kind of stuff into your presentation a bit more, which is nice. Keep doing that. Keep building on it, right? And try to make something that is like, and use it on everything, but like try to keep it something that is semi-modern, but kind of just like fades in a little bit and kind of makes things more professional, right? Because I know that you're doing the stereotypical like sci-fi 45-degree corner kind of thing here, right? Not that I mind per se, but it's like one of those stereotypes, you know, that you see everywhere. But I already like that you're trying to keep it consistent. You're thinking about this stuff. That's already great. Yep. Presentation again, breakdowns, right? I want to see more breakdowns. Individually, these plants, they do require like a bit more love and, you know, specific structure to how these plants are sculpted, for example. Well, you'll see in a lot of these plants that you have like a very centralized like vein structure. And then in the middle of those veins, you have like, it kind of like bulges out, right? Because the veins is where like stuff comes down, like the plant goes down, and then in between the veins, that's where it kind of bulges up again. And it kind of adds this like really nice volume to like the individual plants. Same thing here as well. You'll probably see that the center of most leaves is not going to be flat, but it's going to be like somewhat like a bulbous, right? And then it kind of goes into the vein in the middle and then bulges out again. So instead of keeping all the sculpts flat, it would be nice to have that like little bit of volume in them. We're going to go into... that's a little bit of specific stuff here, but yeah. Got some primitive data. That's awesome. Let's see. We have everything here. Yeah. One thing that I'll say about this is that it is very demanding on the eyes. Just because there's so much stuff happening and there's no clear way for me to look at any specific point in the scene, right? Because it looks like you're trying to draw my attention here, and it looks like you're trying to potentially draw my attention here, But then there's so much stuff in between that makes it really hard to focus, right? There's multiple ways of doing this. One immediate thing is like lighting, right? Yeah, one big thing is lighting here to kind of just give you a little bit more of a hierarchy when it comes to the light. So that means that wherever you're trying to draw the attention, those are probably going to be your brightest spots, right? So let's say, I don't know, for the sake of argumentation, let's say these two are going to be number 1. And then you kind of have like number 2 is probably going to be like somewhat in the middle here, right? Because you just want some like generic light. So let's say 2. And then maybe up here, you kind of have like a more subtle kind of like 3 going on, right? Because you're trying to have people go up the staircase, maybe. Maybe there's something happening here. But like a hierarchy, right? All right, I gotta head off for now. Thank you for being back, Maru, and hope you're doing well. And we'll see each other later. Yeah, but like a lighting hierarchy can really help here. And also think about like the texture that you're using, right? Because the texture on the floor, really demanding on the eyes. Try to find ways that you can make it less so, right? Even if you have something really demanding like this, how do you then break it up without it being super distracting for us? Stefan is saying, not the biggest fan of vertex painting. I think it would have been better with decals. No, I think here, like vertex painting can work wonders. It's just you need to fine tune it for yeah, with specific height maps or the way that it blends, right? Because you can do decals for sure, but I would actually use them together. So any vertex painting in general is good for like the more generic kind of transitionary detail, right? Like just generic blending, generic transition detail, like all that kind of stuff. Big fan of vertex painting. If you want to have like specific things, like let's say like leaks underneath like a windowsill, then you would have like decals, right? Or let's say someone spilled a drink on the floor. That's where you have a decal. Or I don't know, specific trail or something. Yeah. So I think you're not getting rid of the vertex painting, but you're adding on top of it with like decals. So yeah, good shout there, Stefan. That can definitely be like a specific thing to bring it up a little bit. But I think also what is happening here. Let me see how dense is vertex painting. Yeah, so your vertex painting is really, really dense. That just hints to me that you are probably not using height-based vertex painting. That is going to really elevate your vertex painting, how that's going to look. Because we need some sort of blending between the top and the bottom layer. And that usually happens with like a height map in between, right? So instead of using a normal lerp to blend two textures together, use a height lerp instead. That's gonna increase the look of this by so far. Because I'll tell you this, right? Like if this is your density of vertex painting now, that is a lot of geometry that you're using in a scene. Where if you look at other productions, let's say The Last of Us or Naughty Dog or I don't know, any other production, you're probably going to see a density that is going to be more akin to something like this. Or maybe a little bit tighter, you know? Maybe something like this. And then what you can do is, let's say you have specific areas where, let's say, you're always going to have this lip here. Cool. You'll add like a little bit of vertex data here, right? Because what this allows you to do is be very specific in the areas where you need more density, right? So you do the same thing at the top and at the bottom. You'll add like 2 of these strips, and then wherever you need like a little bit more, you can just start adding it in, right? Add a couple of extra vertices, and that gives you a little bit more flexibility if you really needed it. But honestly, with height painting, it's already going to look like way better. Cool. And then the last thing is the team challenge, of course. Ooh, nice. Randomized mask. Moss mask based on position. That's cool. I do like this small thing. if you're already taking extra time in like recording and like rendering it properly, cut the frame out so that we're no longer seeing like any of the Unreal Engine bullshit, you know? Make it really polished. You're so close. You're so close. Small, tiny thing, but it can definitely level up your presentation. Because this stuff is interesting to look at, right? Really interesting to look at. And then what you can do, if you wanna add additional elements to it, you can then say like, hey, here's a couple of my boxes, and here's the details panel, where I am now going to show you like if I increase the intensity, if I increase this, blah, 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 blah. And then I can see visually the change of those different things happening in real time, right? That is always really cool because it shows me that you've thought about not only the world position like randomization, right, which is already really good, but also like, can I then still do additional tweaks based on my needs? Cool, a bunch of props, a bunch of assets. Again, I would love to see poly counts, texture breakdowns, anything like that, right? Show me the goodies. Show me the good stuff. Right. Okay, zooming out again. Looking at your entire portfolio. A lot of these materials currently feel, let me see, when did you post these? 4 years. It kind of feels like they've held their position onto your portfolio for long enough. I would recommend you to make, well, this is 9 months. It's interesting though, because these are more detailed in terms of breakdown and, you know, attention to detail and all that kind of stuff than these ones. So I'm almost like, I want to see a merger between the two, where you still can do your hand-painted tiles or like your hand-painted projects, which look good, but elevate them to the position where they feel like they're like mini projects. Like I said before, making like a little snippet of a wall where you have like the, honestly, combine these two together, have like a tiled floor that goes into like a little plinth into like your wooden wall with like another plinth to like the top section of the wooden wall. That stuff, using what you have here already, super easy to make. You add way more value than just showing like 2 images, right? Because this is okay, but it's like, how do we elevate this to the next level, right? Like, what can we do with this to make it more applicable to a production pipeline, right? Because if you present this on a sphere or like just a plane, that's all well and good, but I can already see that if you're gonna add this onto like a tiling floor, we're gonna run into issues, right? So how do we solve those issues? Because right now it is made without production in mind, but we need to switch that to being more production minded. So let me take some notes here. So overall, your material work currently, it's not that it's bad in quality necessarily, but well, some of them like this one, I know by the study you're doing now, I know that you can do way better than this, for sure. I'm willing to bet on that. Same for this one. These ones are cool. These ones are cool as well. These ones don't hold up between like all the rest of them. So it kind of makes it feel like the material work is more like a portfolio filler. And if I can already feel that, then I can guarantee you that recruiters are going to be like, oh, okay, simple stuff here. I'm just going to skip over it because it has no value, right? Or barely any value. So it feels like filler for the most part. I would love to see you combine the hand-painted stuff together to make like a small little diorama, and then, yeah, make them more... Make these materials production-oriented. So do a small scene with them, tell a little bit of a story with them, pack them together. That sort of stuff is gonna really elevate how relevant they are to to just like a company production, right? Steam Bats, interesting one. Let me see. What are you doing here? Yeah. So I'm debating. This doesn't feel like high quality enough to keep, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we need to just remove it, replace it with something else, or do something else with it. I'm not sure yet. Because this definitely looks way more interesting than what we're seeing here, right? So I would vouch for like removing it at the moment and then condensing the rest of your portfolio and just keep everything that came after it. I think that's really nice. Stefan is saying you can definitely still improve that one. This one, well, so here's the thing, right? Like you can always improve a piece. That is not really, that is always something that you can do, right? I'm trying to make a judgment of whether it is easier to start from scratch and build everything from scratch to like a higher degree, or salvage what's here. Because you can definitely salvage this, but then I'm thinking like, okay, I want to see more props. I want to see like a little bit of foliage. We need to probably redo like a bit of the trim sheet. We probably need to make new decals and all that kind of stuff. And we're getting really quickly to the point where it's like, wait, but then we're talking about like adding like 90% to it and we're doing only 10%. So maybe at that point, it might be better to just start new, if that makes sense. So that's sort of like the value judgment that I'm trying to make of this portfolio piece, right? But I'll honestly leave that to Martina. If you still want to work on this, if you want to improve it, you can by adding more props and foliage and storytelling to it, right? But if you're like, yeah, I'm kind of done with like the Steam Bats thing, just make something new. So it's not a bad shout, Stefan. It just yeah, probably just depends on the person, right? Ashish is saying you can multiply vertex color and height map noise to create a better blend. Yep. Yep. Talked about that before, so that's a good suggestion. Isn't that studio work? So it's better to keep it in a professional folder? Not all the time. I think whenever you want to add, so my personal preference is putting stuff in separate folders. But that is also because my portfolio has more projects in it, right? Or anyone else's portfolio. It doesn't have to be mine, right? So at a certain point, if you have multiple professional projects and let's say 2 rows of like personal projects, then you kind of want to start thinking about like, okay, how do I organize this from a volume perspective again, right? I actually don't know. How do I... Because yeah, you can see that. Oh my god, so much of this stuff is like outdated now. But you can see that I still have just like all of it like once here, and then I have like my professional work separated, and then personal work separated too. That's the way that I prefer to do things, just because it makes it easier for people to browse. But if you're just dealing with like 2 lines of projects, you can just keep it as like one thing. That's not a big deal. Cool. So what was I saying again? So make the materials more production oriented. Show me more breakdowns. So I think, well, maybe show me more in-depth breakdowns. Because you are doing a good job of having breakdowns in your portfolio. It's just that they're missing like that individualized, like in-depth breakdown aspect to them, right? So the UVs, the poly count, the textures, like all that kind of stuff just separately. Show that to me. Show more in-depth breakdowns and lean into your video / design background more, right? There's there's a lot of potential left on the table by you just really bringing in like your the fonts that you use and the design work that you use, and like really try to think about it from like a design perspective, right? Oh, Out Into the Blue, thank you for reminding me. Yeah, because you did have some stuff on your blog as well. So what about that blog part, since it's only tests and the things that I did for fun? So I think, honestly, that is a perfect use case for like a blog, right? If you have stuff that is for fun, or if you want to share things like with other people, that's how I use my blog, right? So you can see that like I did like the... This is, for people that didn't know, this is how Beyond Extend started, right? I wrote like a weekly blog for like a couple of years already, and then transitioned it into like Beyond Extend, right? I think this, personally to me, is a good use case for the blog, right? If you want to deliver something outside of the scope of your polished portfolio, a blog is a great way of doing that, right? So if you want to share resources, if you want to share, if you want to share resources, if we want to showcase like, hey, this is a fun thing that I'm working on, all that kind of stuff fits really well in here. I try to go for like a more of a structured formula, right? Where like every week the formula that I did was like, I mean, this is like a trip that I did. Oh, interesting. This is when I was transitioning to the website, I think. Let's see if we can find one. So every week what I did was, it was like introduction, work in progress, weekly tip, and resource, right? Resource and inspiration. That's the way that I would always write stuff. It's just because I found it like very fun to do. But the thing here is, the thing that I want to hammer on is that I was trying to just do something fun for myself that then added like value to the community, right? So that's like a perfect place to use a blog for. Cool. Yeah. Let me actually dive into some stuff here. A total of 130 pictures were taken at different angles. Cool. High detail model with texture. That's cool. So with this, right, like there's an opportunity on the table here to just say like, do a full breakdown of like step by step how I've done it, and just showcase like, hey, my first time trying photogrammetry, keep that in mind, but this is what I did, right? So this is the place, this is my setup, this is how many pictures that I took, this is how I organized the data, this is what I had to do to the data, this is how I got the eventual 3D model, and then this is how I projected the texture back on it, right? Because there's a couple of things that are really good at driving traction towards your portfolio. Giving people a resource that they can learn from is a great one to do, right? Especially if it's free, if I can just access it and I can just go to your page and I can learn about like photogrammetry, awesome. Not saying that you have to, but it is a lever that you can use, right? Yeah. Yeah, this stuff is really cool, right? What would be more interesting is that I see you working on it on your blog, and then I see the finished result like in really high quality and high detail, like on your portfolio. That would be fun, right? Because then we're bridging the gap between the two. Cool. Let's continue on here. Yeah, what I'm seeing is already pretty decent, right? I know that like on an individual like artistic basis, like you're doing a bunch of good stuff already, but it still lacks that like detail that I would be looking for, right? You're showing it off, you're doing the presentation, which is good. That's a massive benefit. Now it becomes about like, okay, how do we take my current skill set and it's basically, imagine that you take one angle of this environment. What would you do to make it look better, right? And really think about that. Really think about that like from a attention to detail perspective, right? And that goes from like a lot of things like how are the lights connected to like what is the placement of the props on the floor, and like do I need decals, and hey, I have this like seam in the back in like the vertex painting, all that kind of stuff, right? Like, and the decals that we talked about before, that's why honestly for a lot of people, not only you Martina, smaller but higher quality, right? Because once you figured out like to get, let's say, this single image to like a really really high quality, you've basically built all the tools to make like the other corner with the same kind of stuff that you've made, right? Usually focused on usually single camera to make it really clear cut. Cool. Okay, let's talk about presentation. You were definitely thinking about your presentation, right? You're definitely thinking about like, okay, the fonts and like the presentation a little bit. I like that. You have videos, you have GIFs, you have images. All of it looks nice. Sure, there are like small things where like you can cut out like the UI from Unreal Engine and all that kind of stuff. That's more details, but you're showcasing stuff within the correct format already, which is pretty good. And it is pretty interesting to look at. So pretty good on the presentation side. Let me actually put this to 7 for now. Let's see. Because the thing with presentation, it needs to be consistent over long term, or like your entire portfolio, right? And that is probably where something like this is probably going to cost you some stuff, right? Because this is just like, okay, I've made these hand painted tiles, here it is, right? And it's kind of missing that extra attention to detail that you've then added into the presentation here, right? So we're gonna have to subtract some points. Let's say a 6. Artistically, I would say that you're around like a 5 or a 7 at the moment if I had to gauge your artistic skill. Because again, it's like you're doing some really interesting stuff. Right, so you're doing some interesting stuff here. This is old stuff, I know. But like if I look at this, it's like, okay, there's some interesting shapes going on. Like the patterns are like nicely displayed. And then we kind of go into this where it's like, okay, this doesn't really feel like what it's supposed to be. Which I'll be like open and honest as I can, right? If you then put something like this on your portfolio, I'm immediately like, wait, these two are older. And they look quite nice. Are these just lucky? Because there's something about the consistency of your portfolio that is also hinting at, hey, I can be reliable in a production cycle, right? And if I see 2 good materials, and then you have one where it's like it doesn't even look like the wood or the bark that it's supposed to be, then I'm like, oh wait, was this lucky? You know? And it kind of puts everything else into doubt, which is not something that you want, right? So that's also why a lot of people say focus on only your highest quality work in your portfolio. That is the reason why, right? Same for this one. I think this doesn't really look that nice. I would say it's pretty basic. Also add an opacity map, put it in the scene somehow, you know, like take the presentation to like the next level. Let's see, what else? Let's focus on the bigger stuff, right? Because I keep going into the smaller stuff. So techniques. Let's go on to that. So you have trim sheets. Vertex painting is there, not properly set up, but it is there, so you know that it exists. You're doing some unique sculpting, which is quite nice. You're doing some foliage, which is always like a benefit, showing your versatility. That is good. We know that you can do some good materials as well, so that is great. And then you're doing some of this stuff here, like doing some technical aspects as well. Yeah. The thing though is that when I want to see breakdowns of techniques, I'm still missing a lot of like how you've done stuff, right? This is going into like the total right direction. I love that. I love where this presentation is going. But you can see it's still missing like, okay, how many polys is this, right? Like what kind of texture did you use? Were you smart and did you only use tilables, or did you use unique textures, and how big are they? And there's still a lot of questions that I need to ask that are unanswered at this point. So yeah, that's where we're gonna have to subtract like a couple of points for technique, which also leads into like scoring like pretty low on the hireability currently, because this is the thing that a lot of people run into, right? I know that you can do a lot of really cool stuff. And I know that you're like pretty good at the stuff that you're putting on display too. But the issue is if you don't show it off, then you're leaving it up to my assumptions. And sometimes the reason why I focus so much on this is because a company tries to remove assumptions and questions as best as it can, because it is trying to think about the hiring process, right? It is trying to make a, well, first of all, before I go into that rant, let me link your portfolio, and thank you so much for sharing it as well. So yeah, I hope the help was helpful, and I'm curious to see how you're going to improve on it, Martina. Thank you so much. Okay, now for the rant part. What companies are trying to do is they're trying to minimize the amount of risk that they take on, and they make a big commitment by like hiring you for their company, right? A full-time employee getting hired, that is a commitment for a company. And they are unlikely to do that on the basis of an assumption that they made on your portfolio, right? That is the reason why I'm trying to force people, or trying to give the advice that you need to be as transparent as possible, because that relieves the pressure from a company of hiring you, because they know that you can do the work. They know that your textures are okay. They know that your UV sheets are like nicely laid out. They know that your texture sizes are good for production quality. You know, those things. That is really important. That's why we need to show game art. Thank you for all the feedback and looking at the CV too. No worries. No worries. So yeah, that is really the reason why, right? And that's also why I do these sessions. It's like trying to demystify like all these things for you. Because, and I try to say this like every session, we spend a decent amount of time looking at someone's portfolio, right? I don't know how long the last one was, but we've been streaming for 2.5 hours. We talked about 2 portfolios, right? There's a lot of rambling in between too. But a recruiter usually doesn't spend like a minute like on your portfolio, right? If there's something interesting, sure, they'll stick around. But if the initial impression is like, don't know about that, that's it. It's done. Right? So that's one thing that we need to keep in mind. But that's the main thing that we need to keep in mind. Like, initial impact, really, really big. Cool. Maybe it makes me think about like having to revise like the way that I structure like the 4 pillars, maybe. Yeah. Initial impact. Yeah. Maybe. I'll think about it. I will think about it. But yeah, we'll just have a chat for like, let's say 15 to 20 minutes. Give myself a little break, and then I need to go to like a mentorship session. So if you've got any questions before I go, now is your time. Feel free to fire away. Or if anything during this entire portfolio review session was unclear, feel free to ask me about it too, right? This is a session where I hopefully help you make a better portfolio. So if there's anything that I can do, feel free to ask away. Oh, and there goes my camera because the battery is exhausted. That is awesome. I am a mentor, yes. I am a mentor in the void of nothingness now. Oh, this is good. I like this. It's probably because it's so hot in here as well. Oh my god. Yes, but I am a mentor. Yeah, I do mentorships on my own. It's been a while since we had an open slot, just because I've been so busy with like the website rework and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I will be opening slots soon. I've had a couple of people message me privately already on Discord that we will be diving into mentorship soon. So yeah, if you are interested and you're a part of the community already, feel free to send me a message if you are. Yeah, this is really awkward, huh? Just like a black box that you're looking at. I need to do something about the battery situation, honestly. I threw this question in the Discord, but since you are here, what are your thoughts on mentorships? When would be an optimal time in one's career to consider one, etc.? You don't want to do it early on. Honestly, when a mentorship, you want to already have like a good baseline of like a bunch of the core skills already. Otherwise, you're just throwing money at the wall for no gain, right? I think where my recommendation would be is if you already have made an asset for yourself, right? If you've made one or multiple assets for yourself, if you've made a small diorama, something like that scale, that is when you're perfect for a mentorship. Anything sooner, honestly, I mean, a mentor will likely probably help you with, hey, here's how to model, here's how to bake, here's how to do this. But it is also coming from like, I'm an environment art mentor, right? So to me, what is at the core of my mentorships is I want to teach you how to build bigger, well, not bigger. I want to help you build more effective production ready environments, right? That is my focus. So if we then have to spend a bunch of time on like, oh, I'll teach you how to use soft select, or I'll teach you how to like do a Boolean or an extrude, like, you know, that kind of stuff is just, it's not that I mind teaching it, but I think it's personally like a waste of your money at that point. Because with those generic skills, like trying to learn to model, a bunch of really good resources on YouTube for that, honestly. And it also doesn't matter which one you pick, really, because modeling is sort of modeling, right? And sure, you need to know about optimization down the line, but in the beginning, don't care about that. You need to get good at modeling first. So yeah. But that would be my recommendation when it comes to, yeah, mentorships. You're also asking in the community chat about some commonly used platforms. That's a good question. Not really. I know that the Mentorship Coalition was there for the longest time, but I don't know if they're still active. I know that Vessel Forge is coming about. They're pretty good. Sheila mentioned them as well. So shout out to Sheila for mentioning that too. They have some pretty well established like artists working with them. Yes, the other division is doing a good job there too. And then hopefully we will join them soon as well. I mean, I am already, but yeah, the ambition would be to do something broader with that. Yeah, just to give you a couple of things there to go with when it comes to mentorships. All right, since my battery has died, I'm just going to cut it short. But I thank you all for being here. I'll see if I can show it, like, I don't know, do something with my battery or something like that. But yeah. Eisendrag is saying, could I reach out to you on Discord so we may talk about it more this time? Yeah, sure. Ashish is also saying, also you can ask the artists you like if they do mentorships. Yeah, that's not a bad shout. And Fairmora is saying, Zug Zug for stylized art. Yes. Yes, thank you for the shout out there, Fair. That's a good recommendation. Yeah, you can definitely talk to me. Definitely talk to me. I can send you some information. But yeah, I'm hopping out now. I will I will see you all in the community. Hopefully have a hangout during the weekend as well. That would be awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna chill out for a bit now. Like literally chill out. Like, I don't know. Take a cold shower or something like that. I don't know what I'm gonna do. And then dive into some mentorships myself. So yeah. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. Even though you had to like stare at like a blank screen for like the last 10 to 15 minutes. So I appreciate it even more. And I wish you all a creative weekend, and I'll see you soon in the community.